Welcome to episode 17 of the Gluttons For Punishment Podcast, or GFP, a Toronto Maple Leafs and NHL podcast hosted by Michael Lepore and Anthony Bruno. He's Lepore, I'm Bruno. Thank you so much for listening and watching us on YouTube as well. To all the listeners out there, we would really appreciate it if you gave us a 5-star rating and review on Apple. And if you're watching us on YouTube, it would be a big time help if you smash the like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring the notification bell so you know exactly when the GFP podcast is posting some new content. All right, so as of Sunday morning, May 2nd, 2021, the Toronto Maple Leafs are still in first place in the Canadian division standings, leading the Edmonton Oilers by 9 points. I think it's a wrap at this point. After this 5-game winning streak, the Leafs are looking really good. It would be just a colossal disaster if they somehow did not win the Canadian division at this point. But we will get into the week that was and give you our thoughts and opinions on everything that went down with this team. But before we do that, it is time to welcome in my partner in crime, Mr. Michael Lepore. How are you doing, man?
I'm doing well, Bruno. Another good week for the boys in blue. More stuff to smile about. Episode 17. Shout out to Wendell Clark, who I had a poster of on my wall when I was a child. Question, do kids still hang posters on their wall?
I don't think so, Lepore.
I don't know, man. If you walk into like a 13-year-old kid's bedroom, big hockey fan, will he have like posters of like Marner and Matthews and Anderson on
I think
wall?
posters are done, man.
Yeah, that might be
because I was
done.
a big poster guy too. Poster of Stone Cold Steve Austin,
wow,
Dundee.
I didn't have that. I had my Wendell Clark Captain Crunch poster of him skating across the Toronto skyline. That was mine.
That's awesome.
Yeah, great week for the Leafs. Excited to talk about it, man. Again, lots to talk about. Good things though, so we should all be smiling in Leafland.
Oh yeah, it was an incredible week. Let's go over the week that was. Give you a brief rundown of what happened here. So the Leafs started their week on Wednesday against the Montreal Canadiens at the Bell Center. They beat the Habs 4-1. It was Toronto's third straight win. Auston Matthews scored one of the goals of the season in this game. I thought it was just absolute sorcery. Like, bats the puck out of midair around the defenseman and fires it into the net. Like, it was just unbelievable. When you see it in slow motion, your jaw is just on the floor. So, and the other big story in this game, actually, Lepore, was the play of the fourth line. And we can get into this later in the show, but Thornton, Brooks, and Spezza in this game combined for 4 points. And they've been really solid recently.
Boys.
So that's been good to see. And, there was really nothing else to see in this game. Jack Campbell played well. He made 32 saves. So, like I said, Leafs pick up their third straight win. And then they play the very next night at home against the Vancouver Canucks. The Leafs rested 4 players in this game, giving them maintenance days. So no Jake Muzzin, no Morgan Riley, no Nick Foligno, and no Jack Campbell. But it didn't matter one bit because the Leafs beat the Canucks 4-1 for their 4th straight victory. Rasmus Sandin, who has been fantastic since returning from his fractured foot, elevated in the lineup. They had him on the top pair with TJ Brody in this game. They had him on the first power play unit. We didn't get a chance to see Sandin on the first unit because the Leafs actually didn't get a power play in this game, but he looked great. He played over 21 minutes. And David Riddick, he was playing his first game since that abomination of a game against the Vancouver Canucks on April 20th, where he allowed 5 goals. So nice bounce back performance for David Riddick. This was also the game that Wayne Simmons fought Alex Edler, getting some revenge for injuring Zach Hyman. So that was a big talking point as well. And Auston Matthews, what else is new? Scored his 36th goal of the season. And then the Leafs closed out the week Saturday night against the Canucks once again, beating them 5-1 for their 5th straight win. Auston Matthews, 2 more goals in this game. He now leads the league with 38 goals. He's 9 ahead of Connor McDavid in the race for the Rocket Richard Trophy. It's not a race anymore. It is signed, sealed, delivered. Auston Matthews just quite simply having one of the best goal-scoring seasons really we've ever seen. Yeah. Jack Campbell made 26 saves in the win. He is now 15-2-1 with a 207 goals against average and a 927 save percentage. So Lepore, everything seems to be coming together at the right time right now for the Toronto Maple Leafs. What did you think about the week that was, buddy?
It's a good week. It was a calm week, I'd say, for Leafs fans. It's not too often we can look back at a week and just kind of say, yeah, things kind of went the way they should, and there's not too much to talk about. So we're grateful for that, Toronto Maple Leafs, because once in a while we appreciate when our stress levels don't have to be at all-time highs. But we'll start at the first game. The first goal went to the Leafs. It was Willie in tight, like where he likes to be. Great pass from Marner. Leafs were snapping it around on the power play, getting some production on the power play.
It's coming around, Lepore.
It's coming around, man. Coming around. Then the second goal, as you mentioned, the Auston Matthews goal. You described it as absolute sorcery. I think that's a good way to put it. What a goal. To me, just what a goal from a player who defines what the current NHL elite athlete can do. And to me, like, I always point to certain things that you see in the NHL. What impresses me most is not when a guy dekes out like 5 guys and goes bar down. It's when they do something that is pretty basic or appears to be pretty basic, but they do it in such a simple way. And the fact that they've done it at that level to me is bananas. Like, if you watch what Matthews actually did, just watching it, like if you saw him in practice, bat a puck down, make a little move and swipe it in the net, you'd say, oh, wow, that was cool. But I'll say it, to have the balls to try it in game number 1 and then to pull it off is absolute craziness. And people will say, oh, a lot of luck's involved and stuff like that. And it is, but I would respond to that by saying it wasn't a coincidence that Auston Matthews did it. If Pierre Engvall did it, I'd be like, yeah, it was the moment of his life and we'll never see anything like that ever again. But it wasn't a coincidence. It was number 34. And I've made the point about that Ovechkin goal when he was on his back and he wrapped it in. People were like, oh, he was really lucky. And of course he was. Like, a lot of fortune has to happen for a goal like that to go in. But it wasn't a coincidence that it was the greatest goal scorer we've ever seen score that goal. So, like, what a moment from Matthews. And
it's so true, Lepore. And just to add in quickly, it kind of reminds me of basketball players when you think of like Steph Curry, Damian Lillard, even LeBron, when they hit some of these like crazy buzzer beating shots. When Lillard's hitting like a 40-footer for the win, or LeBron banks one off the backboard against the Raptors in the playoffs. And people are like, holy crap, how did they do that? And then you hear their coaches after the game and they're like, these guys do this in practice all the time. Like, they specifically practice these crazy types of shots to pull it off in games. And it's, you know what? It's the same thing with Auston Matthews. I'm sure that he's working on his hands and trying all these crazy moves so he can pull it off in a game situation. So yeah, I just wanted to add in there. That was insane.
Awesome. What a goal. One of the plays of the year for the Leafs for sure. Moving forward to the second period, Muzzin made it 3-0 with a shot that went through a crowd. There was a little stint there where the Habs did get some pressure and Campbell stopped Armia on a breakaway. But then Suzuki was able to snipe one in. Great shot, short side, beat Campbell.
Really nice shot.
Yeah, we've said before, we really like that kid. Something Canadiens fans can be excited about. Moving to the third, Brooksy gets the goal after the giveaway behind the net. If you remember, the goal he scored was like a week ago or 2 weeks ago, was like Marner just dished it off to him for an open net. Like, Brooksy's getting easy ones, man. He's earning his paycheck a lot easier than some people are, but a great guy to have in the lineup. He's doing well, man. He's playing well. Number 77 too. Good number. We like it. Little stint after that, the Leafs again, more pressure, but they were unable to completely put the game away. And Tavares was stopped on a breakaway. And there was also a play. He hit the post on a slot shot. I guess one of those games that just wouldn't go in for him. But the Leafs really did have a great third period. They outshot the Habs 11-9 in the third. The Habs did win the shot. The shot total was 33-29 in total for the Habs. As I mentioned, Leafs win that game 64% of the time on money puck. But what I did really like about that game, and we've touched on it before, is we're seeing more of the same from this Leafs team regarding how they're giving us an increased comfort level in the third period when they have a lead. So it's nice. Like I said, here's this team winning going into the third, and they're outshooting their opponent, outpossessing, outshooting their opponent. So we said it a million times how this is not something that we've seen from Leafs teams in the past. And it's comforting. It's the whole thing that, like, the old saying is the best attack is the best D. Well, the best D is the best attack. And it seems like the Leafs have that in their brains and they're executing it well. So nice win. Good way to start the week. Win over a team that it looks like they're going to play in the first round of the playoffs. Just some boosted confidence. And with the game the following night lined up against the Canucks, it was, like I said earlier, it was nice to get some comfort.
No, 100%. And Lepore, you made a really good point how it just seems like there's this comfort level now. And there were times during the season where, it got frustrating, right? Because the Leafs would be in these tight games in the third period, and you would think, oh God, this is a coin flip game against a team that they should be beating. And now you're seeing over this last stretch that they're just really dominating teams. And Sheldon Keefe, he actually said after last night's game, he said there was a turning point, and he goes back to, I believe, the Vancouver 6-3 loss. So I guess over the last, I mean, obviously they've won their last 5 games, but he said that there was a flip that switched. I was listening to his post-game comments, and he's saying that we've really just dialed in to our structure, the way we want to play both offensively and defensively. And you're seeing it during this 5-game winning streak. They've outscored their opponents 22-7. Another stat to bring up, the Leafs over their last 20 games, Lepore, are 14-3-3, the best record in the NHL in that span. So this team seems to be dialing it in at the perfect moment.
Yeah. One thing you're seeing, I'm seeing it really in the offensive zone. And even with the lower lines, like we all know when the elite players are on for any team, they're snapping it around. They're keeping the puck away from the other team. You're just kind of waiting for that scoring chance. And of course, it's not as clear when you have the third and fourth line out there. But I'm even seeing it with them. When they do get the puck in the offensive zone, like it's nice, right? They're moving it around, a lot of movement, gets to the point, corner. And even if they don't create a huge scoring chance, like you don't expect a third or fourth line to do, you can tell there's a system, there's something there that 100%. They're doing, and they're executing something. And this is not just a coincidence that they're out moving the other team. It's something that's been tried and it's being executed. So like it looks good. Like I remember, you always laugh, man, when it was always after a team couldn't get a line change and they'd be playing Pittsburgh, and when they'd fire out Malkin and Crosby together. Like just hilarious, like how they're moving it around, and you could see the structure there and how this team is not getting that puck away. And now I'm not saying the Leafs third and fourth line resemble Malkin and Crosby, but they look good, man. A lot of positives again, more positive stuff to point to.
No, that's another great point you brought up, Lepore, because a lot of times, you think about the bottom 6, right? And you think about defensive forwards and just keep the puck out of your own net and not very good offensively. But what you've been seeing from this Leafs bottom 6 is that Sheldon Keefe wants them to almost play the same way that the top 6 is playing. Yeah. And we've talked about this in the past, saying that, Sheldon Keefe obviously wants his bottom 6 to be very responsible defensively and not get scored on. But the way that you're seeing Spezza, Brooks, and Thornton play, and even that third line with Mikheyev and Kerfoot, like they're being aggressive in the offensive zone. They're creating scoring chances. And now, are they creating chances like Matthews and Marner and Tavares and Nylander? No, but they're doing a lot of really good things in the offensive zone. So Lepore, you brought up a really great point there. And yeah, I mean, just from top to bottom throughout this lineup right now, they are executing at a very high level. So Lepore, this brings us into a conversation about the Montreal Canadiens, because if the season ended today in the first round of the playoffs, it would be everyone's dream matchup. The Toronto Maple Leafs against the Montreal Canadiens in a 7-game playoff series. So, I mean, what are your thoughts about this, Lepore? Like, is it a foregone conclusion that the Habs basically have no chance to beat this team based on the way that, I know, call me a Leafs homer and whatever, but based on the way the Habs have been trending, based on the way the Leafs have been trending, I mean, they play each other 3 more times in the regular season.
It's going to be fun.
So yeah, man, give me your thoughts on a potential first round matchup against Montreal.
Before I get to how the teams would match up against each other, I'd like to point something out. Someone brought it up, and I never thought about it until they mentioned it, and it really is sad. this will be the first time, if it does happen, and we're all expecting it to happen, this will be the first time these two teams play in the playoffs since the 70s. And there ain't going to be any fans in the building.
Brutal.
That sucks. Like, whoever you're cheering for, whether you're a Leafs fan, a Habs fan, or a neutral watching this series, to have arenas going bonkers for their team would have been a great thing for this series.
Can you imagine these buildings?
Man, I went to
Bell Center.
I went to the Bell Center for a Leafs game, and the Bell Center is an absolute blast. Like it's a special place, and I'm sure it was increased that night, like Saturday night against the Leafs. It was actually the game Kovalchuk scored in overtime. So like it was a fun game to watch this, and that was, I think, Campbell's first game or one of his first games with the Leafs. And I can't imagine, like, that game was bananas to be at. So I can't imagine what it feels like at the Bell Center when they score an overtime winner in the playoffs.
Would just be ridiculous.
Awesome. Yeah. So now going to the matchup, it's still the Montreal Canadiens, man. I had this conversation with my buddy. He's like, do you think the Habs would have any chance beating the Leafs over 7 games? And it's like, with my brain, I say no. With my gut, I'm going to say it. Like, I think it's going to be a series. I really do. And again, I say on this show all the time that you can point to me and call me the insecure Leafs fan, but I acknowledge that I am. And that's not me making preemptive excuses for them, but it's just that thing. You can picture it. You can picture Montreal getting timely scoring, their power play clicking. I'll say it, bullshit goals, like one that goes off 2 Leafs and in, or a bad rebound given up that goes right to the Habs player, whoever's in nets for them, whether it's, their starter or their backup, making the unbelievable save at the right moment. And that is increased. I mean, I think every fan of a team that's favored has these fears going into a series, but I just have these increased fears because it's the Montreal Canadiens. And like, again, I've talked about hockey gods on this show in the past. Am I confident in a Leafs win? Yes, I'd be confident in a Leafs win. But this Montreal team's been through a lot. Like, they have been through a lot of adversity, and they're not going to roll over. Like, I really do not think there's any chance this team rolls over. Like I can't see this being like, I say a sweep, but like a quote unquote easy series for the Toronto Maple Leafs. If it does go ahead, and they got guys who are going to play hard. Like, we all love Gallagher. Tyler Toffoli has found a spot with this team. Suzuki looks good. I mean, this Caulfield kid, at the end of the day, that ignorance is bliss thing going into the playoffs against the Toronto Maple Leafs. Like, what does this kid have to lose? He's going to be skating his ass off, having a good time, trying to put his name in the paper. So the brain says the Leafs should give the Montreal Canadiens a beating in the first round. The gut says this series, if it does occur, is going to be a heck of a lot harder than it should be based on the talent matchup.
And that's totally fair, Lepore. I mean, listen, we've seen the way the Montreal Canadiens play. They have 4 lines. Now, listen, I know earlier in the season, everyone would talk about how deep the Habs are, and they're just as deep as the Leafs. I think now we've seen after 50 games that it's not even close. The Leafs are a lot deeper than the Habs, but this is still a team that can roll 4 lines. Obviously, their talent level doesn't stack up, but they can play a tight defensive structure. They can play fast. They can obviously get good goaltending, whether it is Carey Price or Jake Allen. I know Carey Price, has been out with his concussion and he hasn't had the greatest season, but Jake Allen's been totally fine this year. So I'll say this, the one thing that concerns me, and I've talked about this before on the podcast, it's that formula that the Blue Jackets used against the Leafs in the qualifying round last season.
Exactly.
That the Leafs are going to outchance, they're going to outshoot, they're going to dominate play against Montreal. But what Montreal is going to look to do is obviously get really good goaltending and then score on those chances and those odd man rushes that they get the other way. And there's not going to be a lot of them, but when they get their opportunities, they're going to need to score, because that is exactly how the Blue Jackets beat the Leafs in 5 games last season in the playoffs. Because as we all know, the Leafs, for the most part, dominated that series. When you look at all the metrics, the Blue Jackets got incredible goaltending from Korpisalo and Merzlikins, and they scored those timely goals when they had those opportunities. And based on the way the Leafs play, they're very aggressive. They have their D jump into the play a lot. So sometimes that does create odd man rushes the other way. Now, are the Montreal Canadiens going to be able to take advantage of that? Well, since Brendan Gallagher went out, with his injury, and listen, I know the Habs just won their last 2 games, but over their last 15 games, the Montreal Canadiens have scored just 31 goals. Okay, so
yeah, Montreal Canadiens Twitter has been all over the lock of scoring.
They're essentially averaging 2 goals per game since Gallagher went down. They've been outscored 49-31 since Gallagher went down. So over the last 15 games. So, man, this is
I feel like the only guy scoring for them is Toffoli. Like every time I just watch Habs highlights, I hear his name, but it feels like we're not hearing Petrie's name. I mean, he came out like a flyer early in the season, like Anderson's cooled down. So yeah, it just like seems like Toffoli's the guy and no one else.
And Tyler Toffoli's a good player and he's had a great season, but man, when you got to rely on Tyler Toffoli to be your game breaker, your best goal scorer, your most high-end talented player against the Leafs team that has all of these stars, that has Auston Matthews playing out of his mind right now. I mean, I just think it's an uphill battle, Lepore. I really think it is. And
I think they would know that. I just think it's about a style they're going to play, and they're going to do that whole thing where you lower percentages. Like if you tell the Montreal Canadiens, like if you tell Leafs, if someone told me, okay, the scoring chances in a game are going to be, I don't know, let's call them 15-10 for Toronto. It's like, I'd be happy about that because, okay, we're getting 50% more scoring chances and we have more offensive talent. But then they're going to do that thing where they're going to try to lower the total scoring chances from 15-10 to 9-6. And some people would say, well, that's still 50% more. It is, but the total amount is lowered. And that's exactly what Columbus did. And that is how they beat the Leafs. And Montreal is going to do their best with that. It's like in football when you have a quote unquote weaker team, on every snap, they let the clock run down because they know that team can move the ball better and faster than they can. So they just lower their chances to do that. And you're going to see it. Like that's going to be the style they play. But I'll ask you this, and I can't believe I'm asking you this. If you're the choice right now, do you want the Leafs to face Carey Price or Jake Allen?
Wow. That's a really good question. Honestly,
imagine someone asking us at the start of the season or last year, but I don't think, I think we know the answer, but I don't think it's like a slam dunk.
No, it's not a hot take. It's not a slam dunk by any means. And listen, I know Carey Price is out right now and he hasn't had a very good season. I mean, you look at his save percentage, it's barely over 900.
Yeah.
But man, after what I saw Carey Price do last season, where listen, he did not have a good season last year, especially if you look at his regular season numbers. But in the playoffs, Carey Price was awesome last season.
Yeah.
Okay. Against Pittsburgh and then against Philadelphia in the next round. So, you know what, Lepore? I think I'd rather face Jake Allen.
Yeah.
I really would. I mean, just thinking about how Carey Price can elevate his game come playoff time. And I think Jake Allen's a really good goalie too, but there's just something about Carey Price. And, you could say to me, he's been on the decline the last few seasons. You go look at his numbers. He's not the guy he used to be. We get that. We know Carey Price isn't that, Vezina
save percentage,
Hart Trophy caliber goalie who just used to dominate year in and year out. He's no longer that guy, but man, oh man, in a 7-game playoff series facing that guy, it's still going to be scary, man. So yeah, give me Jake Allen.
I guess I'm kind of answering my own question here because like with what I just said about what would have to happen for Montreal to beat Toronto. Okay, they're going to need goaltending. Like checkbox number 1, they're going to need goaltending and they're going to need it at a very high level. Even if Allen is having a quote unquote better year or he's played better recently than Price, the more likely thing to me would be Price playing bananas more than Allen. So I guess that's how I would see it anyway. So to answer my own question, I'd rather face Allen than Price just for that. And it sounds overly simplistic, but just for that chance that Carey Price ends up being Carey Price and everyone knows.
There's just that like glimmer of hope for Habs fans that like Carey Price can recapture the Carey Price that we've seen in the past. And honestly, he is capable of stealing a series. He really still is, even though he hasn't been the guy that he used to be, as I mentioned, right? So Yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting to see, but at the end of the day, this Leafs team is going to be heavily favored. When you look at the betting odds, when you look at the metrics, I can't see a series like this going more than like 5 or 6 games. Now, it is the Montreal Canadiens. It's playoff time. Both teams are going to be playing, fired up, and it's going to be tight. But I mean, I think the Leafs get through a series like that, no problem. But
we were just talking about the Bell Center. Is that an increased benefit to us that we won't have to go into a crazy Bell Center?
I think that definitely favors the Leafs.
Yeah. And that's a compliment to the people of Montreal.
Oh my God. You go into into the Bell Center for a Leafs Habs playoff game? Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Those fans
the Habs are up 1-0.
Roof off the building.
Yeah.
That's
the Habs
a
are up
huge
1-0
advantage
before the
for
puck
the
drops. 100%.
Well, Lepore, a question that I have for you, okay, because the Winnipeg Jets have been trending in the wrong direction right now. They've lost 5 games in a row, and there's a chance now that they've lost 6 games in a row, Lepore. So there is a slight chance now. Both the Habs and Jets have 6 games left. Montreal is only 2 points behind Winnipeg. So there's a chance that Winnipeg could fall down to that 4th and final playoff spot in the North Division.
Yeah.
Would you rather play the Jets in a first round series based on the way that they've been trending at the moment? Nikolai Ehlers is out of the lineup. Like I said, they've lost 6 games in a row. So what are your thoughts on a matchup against the Jets? Who would you rather play at this point?
I'm going to start off by saying I consider myself an individual who can admit when they were wrong as much as it irks me. But I think we should ask ourselves broadly, have we been wrong about the Winnipeg Jets? Because we haven't shied away from complimenting teams on this podcast, and probably more than any other team over the course of this season, we've been giving a lot of high fives to the Winnipeg Jets. Like, they were the team we thought had the most high-end talent. They have goaltending. They have good coaching. They have balance. That was the team, if you ask me. It's funny, even like a couple of weeks ago, what's the team that could beat the Leafs without something crazy weird happening? I would have said the Jets. Because again,
I was right there with you.
They have the talent. They have the centers. They have the goaltending. But what's happened over this 6-game stretch really is shocking, because typically when I'll call them good teams go on losing streaks, when you do look at the underlying numbers, they didn't play that poorly. They just happened to lose. Like their percentages happened to be all negative at one time, and they lost in games. Like we pointed, before this win streak for the Leafs had, was it 5 in a row, 6 in a row? The Leafs had lost 5 in a row. But you looked at all the games, outshooting their opponents. They're not getting goaltending. It's just the perfect storm of like everything bad happening. But you look at the Jets, and it's not even about the underlying numbers to me. Now that like the more I think about it, their body language sucks. Like everyone seems so like every time that camera goes on the bench, it's just negative and like a weird feeling. And that to me is so much worse in the way that I feel like that's so much harder to overcome. Like let's throw numbers out the window. Let's throw like, bad goaltending out the window or the puck not going in. When you can look at a team's bench and they look like, you have to tell me the score, show me their bench. I know they're losing. And I also know they're not going to win tonight. And that sounds kind of like corny and cheesy, but it's true. It's true. Everyone's shoulders are slouched. And I don't know, man. Like you asked me today, I'd rather play Winnipeg to sum it all up.
That's
like
totally
that team.
Fair.
Yeah. Like you have, and again, as a neutral, you're playing the Leafs are a team whose confidence is up here. And for those listening, my hand's above my head. And the Winnipeg Jets are a team where the confidence is at the floor. So like to me, that's where something shocking or that underdog thing happening is almost an impossibility, because if you don't believe you can do it, you're not going to do it. And that's what they look like right now. They look like they've lost even before they step on the ice. Whereas like you play that Montreal, that Oilers team where, again, I'll say it again, ignorance is bliss. If they think they can do it, maybe they can do it. But right now, if you ask me, give me the Jets.
Yeah, you know what, Lepore? And like I said, both teams have not been trending well. And even though the Montreal Canadiens have won 2 games in a row and Cole Caulfield just scored the overtime winner, you heard those numbers I mentioned. The Habs have been outscored 49-31 over their last 15 games since the Gallagher injury. But man, oh man, looking at the Winnipeg Jets, I mean, this has been really bad these last 6 games. So they're 0-6, and Lepore, they have been outscored 26-9 during this 6-game losing streak. And then when you look at the teams that they've played, it's the 3 other playoff teams in the North Division. So this team has showed late in the season against the other teams in the Canadian division that they are getting totally outclassed right now. And listen, I know losing Nikolai Ehlers is monumental for that team because he is so good. He plays an amazing 200-foot game. That guy can do it all. So obviously losing a player like Nikolai Ehlers is going to hurt. But the way that I've seen the Jets play the Oilers this season, I don't know what it is. The Oilers are just swimming in their heads this season.
Yeah,
they
are.
Can't figure out that team. And maybe that goes back to the point that you made, Lepore, about the body language. It's like when this team plays Connor McDavid, they're just like drawing dead. It's like they just can't figure out how to stop that team offensively. And that's a big issue. And obviously, you've seen the way that the Leafs have handled them. You know, they just beat the Jets a couple of times last week. So, man, oh man, the way the Jets are playing right now, and especially with Ehlers being out, that's a team that is not looking good. And honestly, at this point, as a Leaf fan, Lepore, give me either one of them.
Yeah,
because right now it looks like the Leafs and the Oilers are the class of the division, and we can later in the podcast I'll poke some holes in the Oilers when we get into a conversation about that. But right now, it's you got the Leafs and Oilers, and like you said, Lepore, I think we were both wrong about Winnipeg because we were singing their praises for almost the entire season. But when it's mattered most, late in the season right now, you're playing these other playoff teams and you're getting completely dominated like that. It's not a good look.
Yeah, I always make the joke about like sometimes going like full Don Cherry Rock'em Sock'em mode when talking about teams or games. And when we had played the Jets, I looked at those games and I was sitting back and that thing popped in my head of if these two teams play each other in the playoffs, we're the Bruins. And I never thought I would say that about a Maple Leafs team, or at least like this soon after what we saw in recent years. But I had that thing of kind of like what I mentioned before about Montreal, how like I could see them beating us. Like I could see those weird things happening. But I was watching us against the Jets and I was like, no, like, and it sounds weird, but I look at the two teams and I ask, besides maybe Ehlers, who can be a little bit of a pest, who are their assholes?
Yeah, I mean they don't really
have
anyone that scares you.
They don't have that. Like obviously like we mentioned the talents there, but again, like watching those, I was like, no, like there's gonna be close games of that weird thing. And I'll even say it as a Leaf fan. There was always that thing in me watching those series against Boston where it's like we're gonna lose because there's that thing you can't put your finger on that Boston had over us where they're getting under our skin. They're gonna get away with bullshit. And watching those games, and again, I can't believe I'm saying this as a Leafs fan. Guys like Simmons, Thurl Thornton's taken on, Bogosian, Hyman, just being fucking annoying. And like there was that one play where like Ehlers was on an island, like during that whole conversation with Thornton, where it's like no one stepped in for him. It just was a bad look. And like I thought in that moment of like, I couldn't see this team beating the Leafs over a 7-game series. Like I'd be as confident essentially as I could be over any playoff team because they miss that thing. Like any team you play in the playoffs can have some talent and some ability to beat you. But there was that thing, and maybe, and I'll say it, like I guess I was wrong, like I'd missed it all year. But in those games against the Leafs, it really jumped out at me that like we would beat them because we're gonna be in their face. We have the guys that are gonna be pricks so over 7 games. I just couldn't see it right now. And like so I will say, yeah, I'll say it again, give me the Jets. Like I would take the Jets over the Habs right now.
Yeah, they really do seem to be missing that ingredient. And I like how you brought up how it kind of feels like the Leafs Bruins series, how there was always that one thing the Leafs were missing. And even you brought up the whole, Ehlers Thornton confrontation. Even the way that like Simmons was getting in the head of Pierre-Luc Dubois. He was like chirping him on the bench and then roughing him up after the whistle. And you could just see the look on Dubois' face. And this is like the number 2 center, the big trade they made, shipping out Patrick Laine to get PLD. And he's just like, man, oh man, like these guys are tough. They're in my face. And he just didn't look comfortable in those games last week, man, against the Leafs. So I think you're onto something there. There's just something missing with that team. And we've talked about all the talent they have in their top 6. You got Connor Hellebuck, the reigning Vezina Trophy winner. There's some holes on the blue line, but yeah, at the end of the day, this team is trending in the wrong direction right now, Lepore, and it does not look good.
And like you said, with the way they've played Edmonton, how that looks like that's going to be the first round, that's not good. I mean, they have some time to clean it up, but we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see if the Jets clean it up. And Paul Maurice is a great coach, so we'll see if he's got anything up his sleeve to kind of energize that group and get back on track before the playoffs. But before now, let's move in to these Canucks games. So we'll start with that first game against Vancouver, the 4-1 win. I mentioned all the guys who were out for their maintenance days. So just to reiterate, Muzzin, Riley, Foligno, and Campbell all sat in that Thursday game. So we saw Sandin take on a bigger role. David Riddick was back in the net. So just give me your thoughts on that first Canucks game.
Yeah, that game had a crazy weird start. Like it was 15 minutes in and the shots were 2-2. Like I remember it was like, I didn't know what the hell I was watching. The Leafs essentially spent those entire 15 minutes in the Canucks end, but couldn't hit the fucking net. And then you start getting that feeling of like, here we go again, like those games a couple of weeks ago against the Canucks. But they were lucky enough to get a goal from Willie. It was after a huge turnover. Gouch fed him in front. And again, like such a weird game. As I mentioned, Vancouver had 2 shots in the first period. Now, like this team's been through a lot, man. And like, I will say props to the Vancouver Canucks because they've taken an absolute shitstorm and I'm sure they just want this season over and done with. So the fact that they're battling and they're sticking around games, like props to Vancouver. Early in the second, you had a long 2-on-1 with Marner to Matthews. We could have all bet our houses on how that was going to end up. Shot from Matthews goes in high, 2-0. And then Engvall actually scored. Pierre 2-1, or sorry, 3-0, 2-1, 3-0 Leafs after that one. It was Sandin who got the assist. It was a great zone entry from Spezza. Like he came in, held up, found Sandin, and then Sandin fed it over to Engvall. The Canucks were able to make it 3-1 on the PP. Miller goal, weird goal, and to make all Leafs fans roll their eyes. It was going wide. Riddick was kind of out of position. And if you look at the replay, the shot was going wide and it hit him in a weird spot as he was getting back in the net and went in. So yeah, late in the third period, Holtby turned it over. Kerfoot found Marner. That made it 4-1, as I mentioned. Again, odd game. Shots finished 24-16 in favor of the Buds. And Money Puck had that game with a result of the Leafs winning 68% of the time. So that was a gassed Vancouver team. And it was an odd game altogether. You mentioned Leafs had guys on maintenance days. Just happy to get 2 points and no injuries. So check the box.
Exactly. That's the big thing right now is just stay healthy. There's only 6 games to go here for the Leafs. And I'm sure we're going to see more guys rest over the last couple weeks of the season.
Yeah.
But I mean, that Vancouver team, they just look completely done.
Yeah.
They're checked out. And I know they have games in hand. And people were saying last week, oh, the Canucks can still catch the Habs for the last playoff spot in the North.
I was excited for it, man. I was really excited to see something in the division go nuts. It would have been fun, but
yeah, I mean, and that's fair. I mean, I think a lot of people were hoping for a tight finish in the Canadian division standings, and we still might get that with Calgary because Calgary is right there and they could still make the playoffs. But man, oh man, this Canucks team, good night. It's over for the Vancouver Canucks at this point. But Lepore, the big conversation that came out of this game really is the roster, I guess, heading into the playoffs, because like I mentioned, we saw Sandin take on a prominent role in this game. He played with TJ Brody and that pair was phenomenal.
Yeah.
And Sheldon Keefe sang the praises of Sandin and Brody after that game. Sandin has been awesome. You look at the underlying numbers. He leads the team in Corsi for percentage since returning from his injury on April 20th.
Really?
Another stat to bring up, Lepore, scoring chances for percentage. So when Sandin is on the ice, the Leafs have been unreal in terms of scoring chances in all situations, not just 5-on-5. He is number one on the team. So when he's on the ice, the Leafs are getting more scoring chances with him than any other player on the roster at the moment since he returned from injury. Like, that just shows you how good this guy has been. And it really has given the Leafs a major X factor come playoff time.
Awesome.
And another thing, Lepore, is the forward group, because as we know, Hyman is out right now, and it remains to be seen when he's going to be back from his sprained MCL. So the question I'll pose to you is, how do you see this playoff roster shaking out with the top six? Let's start with the forwards first.
Sure.
How do you see things shaking out once Hyman comes back from injury?
I have absolutely no clue, because I was the first one on this show that, based on the evidence I had gathered from people who, are kind of tied to the Leafs or anything I'd read, that there was no way Foligno was going to stay on the top line. And they're 4-0. Even, Foligno didn't play that game, but they're 4-0 since Foligno was acquired. Or I shouldn't say acquired, since the games he's actually played. And he's been on that top line. So why would you change something that's working? He made a great play the other night to get the puck to Marner before Marner was able to get it to Matthews. It's working. The one thing, and maybe it's just hope, the Galchenyuk thing, man. Like, he scored last night, but I'd mentioned last week that I don't like it. Like, I don't think he brings what that line needs. And when I say that, I mean Nylander and Tavares. He's been a great acquisition for the Leafs. He's fit in nicely, but I think in an ideal situation, he's on the third line. So with me saying all that, is it Foligno, Marner, Matthews, Hyman, Tavares, Nylander? That's pretty fucking nice. And then, you go down, and then if you've Galchenyuk on the third line, and then whatever they want to do on the fourth line. They had that, like, the Spezza Thornton thing seems to be pretty established, and then we're seeing centers bounce in and around there, whether it's Engvall or Brooks. And again, like, Engvall scored this week, but so did Brooks. Brooks had a few, but I think Engvall, like, he's slowly going to see his time in this lineup be released. Robertson, can we say that Robertson's done? Like, they're not going to play him simply because of the year of ELC? You think it's safe to say that?
I think at this point, and I just think there's honestly players playing better ahead of him.
Yeah.
And bringing more to the table. And I
like, you forget Robertson. He's a teenager is what it is.
He's still a young guy. There's no reason, based on the way the team is constructed right now, with all the veterans they have and all the skill they have in the top six. Honestly, at this point, I don't really see a spot for Robertson, especially in the playoff lineup.
Yeah. So there's going to be a lot of, and again, maybe this is a stupid conversation altogether, because maybe we're going to see in the playoffs what we're seeing in the regular season. We're going to see a lot of switches and changes, or, like, let's face it, it's unlikely this team remains perfectly healthy over the course of the rest of the season and hopefully a deep playoff run. So they're not going to have a choice but to organize things in certain ways. But the way it is now, I think it's safe to say that Gauch would be put down if Hyman was in the lineup. So it's that top six I said before of 34-16 Foligno and Tavares, Nylander, and Hyman. But we'll see again. You think there's any chance they would play with Tavares, Foligno, Nylander?
I think so. I think that's definitely in play. And I heard on one of the broadcasts, I can't remember exactly who it was, whether it was a TSN or Sportsnet broadcast, but they said, whoever it was, said that they had talked to Sheldon Keefe, and his ideal scenario was actually having Foligno play on the second line with Tavares and Nylander, which makes a lot of sense.
I didn't even know that. Okay.
You figure when Hyman comes back, he could slot into that top line with Matthews and Marner. But like you said, Lepore, the way Foligno's been playing on that top line, 4 assists in 4 games, he's fit in nicely. He knows his role on that line, and that's worked really well. So let's say that Foligno and Hyman are locked into top 6 roles. The big question, like you brought up, is what happens now with Alex Galchenyuk? Because, even going back to the trade deadline and what Kyle Dubas was saying, how, listen, the emergence of Alex Galchenyuk has changed the way that, we've thought about approaching the trade deadline, how they didn't go out and acquire, Taylor Hall or another like high skill top 6 forward. They got a guy like Nick Foligno who can play anywhere in the lineup, right? But now the way that Foligno's fit in with the 2 big boys on the first line, it's like, what do you do with Galchenyuk? Because if you move him down, then somebody else has to come out of the lineup. Because right now, that 4th line with Spezza, Thornton, and Brooks, they have looked really good. Mm-hmm. And I think there's no reason to mess with that. So then when you look at the 3rd line, right now it's Mikheyev, Kerfoot, and Wayne Simmons. Mm-hmm. So
what's going to happen, man?
What do you do with Alex Galchenyuk? And listen, Hyman with his sprained MCL, I know he's back skating. We have no idea when he's actually going to be like 100% ready to go. And based on the way the Leafs have been playing, there's no reason to rush him back. So, I mean, is there a chance that Hyman misses the beginning of the playoffs? I mean, I guess there is a chance. I think he'll probably be back come playoff time, but maybe we see Galchenyuk just stay in that top 6 role. And then when Hyman comes back, Galchenyuk's a healthy scratch at that point. I mean, that's in play. Yeah. There's a lot of things in play. And like you brought up, Lepore, I think it also just comes down to like injuries and sort of, who knows what's going to happen. If someone in the bottom 6 gets injured, that could change things. And at the end of the day, the Leafs and Sheldon Keefe specifically, he's going to have a ton of options to play with here. There's so many different directions he can go in, specifically with the Leafs bottom 6. So yeah, man, at this point, it's like you said, really, who the hell knows at this point? I mean, there's so many scenarios in play with how this roster could shake out come playoff time.
Yeah, I think Galchenyuk, I'll say disappearing, either by way of getting thrown weight on the lineup or off the lineup completely, is not off the cards. Like I saw someone bring that up on Twitter and they got attacked, but I kind of agree with them. Is that why is that off the cards? Like if the top 6 are humming without him, and then when that opportunity comes available, and then the bottom 6 is pretty established and looking nice, what do you do? Like, why would you fuck shit up if you don't have to?
No, it's totally in play, because ideally, I don't think Sheldon Keefe wants Galchenyuk in a bottom 6 role.
Yeah, it's weird. Yeah.
I mean, would it be nice to have that skill and offense lower down in the lineup? Yes, but like we've talked about countless times, like you've brought up, Lepore, we know that Sheldon Keefe prioritizes responsibility, strong defensive play in that bottom 6. So really, Galchenyuk could be the odd man out. It's totally in play, and I think it's just all going to come down to how fast Hyman recovers from this injury. Lepore, another thing we should talk about briefly is also how the defense core is going to shake out, because, I mean, at this point, it's a lock. Sandin is in this lineup come playoff time. I would be absolutely stunned if he is not a regular in this 6-man unit. So then that brings up the question, is Dermott the odd man out? Justin Hall, who's been struggling, like what happens with that pair? Does he stick with the Muzzin and Hall pair going into the playoffs? Mm-hmm. I mean, there's a lot of questions here, Lepore. So what's your take on the situation with the D-core right now?
We should start off by saying that we're very grateful to be able to have these conversations, because in years past, Leafs fans weren't able to have these conversations at all. We were scrapping around like, yeah, so Marinsen's going in and some guy we've never heard of, but no, like the D, I don't know, man, because we seem so comfortable early on with the 4 of Muzzin, Riley, Brody, and Muzzin, Hall, Brody, and Riley. But now Sandin comes in, and it's like, you can't be taking minutes away from a guy who looks this good. I mean, if he's earning his spot, he's earning his spot. And then at the bottom, I mean, Dermott Bogosian is nice. They've been a good 3rd pair. So I don't know. Decisions are going to have to be made. And I'm sure they're in those rooms right now talking about it. But I guess the simplest solution would be Hall moves down. like however they distribute the minutes and they make the pairings, I would say like I can't see anything else happening really. I mean, Muzzin, Brody, or Riley are not going to get pushed to the third pairing. And then by logic, well, we're not going. I'll say it like right now. I think we would all agree Sandin is better than Hall.
Like, you could make an argument that Sandin is like one of the top 2 or 3 defensemen on the team right now.
Yeah,
that's
like
really
it's not a hot take. It's not a hot take to say he should be on the top pairing. So I guess to answer the question, I would say the only thing that could possibly happen is Hall moves down. And then between those, the 4 of Brody, Muzzin, Riley, and Sandin, whatever they want to do with those 4, whatever they think works better and who's playing whatever side they're comfortable on. But I guess that's it. And then I guess Dermott moves to number 7 and you have a Bogosian Hall third pairing. I mean, I wish I had more to say about it, but I don't really. Like there's only so much ice time to go around, and you can't be taking away from guys who are playing that well and for what's working.
This has been, in my opinion, the most interesting development of the entire season because, Leaf fans were really excited about Nick Foligno, but guess what? The biggest late season ad the Leafs made was not Nick Foligno. It was getting Rasmus Sandin back from injury. And I talked about the advanced stats and how good he's been. He has been excellent since coming back from his fractured foot. And it has really thrown a wrench into things here in a good way because you need to play this guy. And, thinking about Justin Hall, he's really struggled. You look at the underlying numbers, like the scoring chances against at 5-on-5. I mean, even just like the goal differential with him on the ice at 5-on-5, like it hasn't been pretty recently. But here's the thing. I think the Leafs still like to have like that left shot, right shot.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't be surprised at all if he just sticks with the top 4 that we've been seeing. And we know that Brody's obviously very comfortable playing on the right side as a left shooting defenseman. So you got Riley, Brody, Muzzin, Hall. And at this point, we talked about this on the last show. I think it's going to be Sandin and Bogosian on that bottom pair. Now, Bogosian, when he got injured, they were saying he's a month away from coming back with that upper body injury. So honestly, at this point, it looks like he's probably going to miss the start of the playoffs. So I think Dermott's job is going to be safe for the next, let's call it 2+ weeks.
Mm-hmm.
But man, oh man, the way that Sandin's been playing, he deserves minutes. And if you're telling me that Hall is going to be playing, 21 minutes a game in the playoffs and Sandin's only going to be playing 15.5 minutes a game, I don't think that's the formula for success, Lepore.
No.
I don't want to see Justin Hall playing 5 more minutes a game in the playoffs than Rasmus Sandin. So
yeah,
again, though, Sheldon Keefe has a lot of like good problems to deal with right now, and Kyle Dubas as well for that matter. So let's leave it in their hands. They're smart guys. I'm sure they're going to figure out the best combinations here, but this is definitely something to look out for as we head into these final 6 games and into what is hopefully going to be a long playoff run.
Yeah.
But Lepore, let's switch things up here and get into this final game of the week against the Canucks.
Yeah, we'll fly through it.
Big 5-1 win, big third period. So give me your thoughts, man.
Yeah, like I said, we'll just fly through it. Actually, the Canucks scored first. It was Pearson, shot from the wing that B. Campbell blocker side off the post and in. It was off a face-off. Dermott and Tavares got their wires crossed, which gave Pearson the opening. It was a seeing eye shot that went in. Soon after that, though, Auston Matthews from Mitch Marner, about the 47th time I've said that on this podcast today, tied at 1. That was when I referred to earlier where Foligno made the great play, winning the battle in the right corner, getting it to Marner, who got it to Matthews. And then during the span of the end of the first to the start of the second period, Campbell made some pretty big saves to keep the score at 1-1. I mean, looking at the 3 games of the week, you win 4-1, 4-1, 5-1. You wouldn't think it was your goalie who won any games for you. But it's those moments. And again, we sound so cliche when we say just make the save. It's moments like that where instead of going into the second period down by 1, you're tied, or allowing a goal early in the second and you're chasing a game, you're still tied. And Campbell was able to do that last night. Then the next goal was Matthews. Again, it was a turnover Edler had a shift from hell. Marner stripped him of the puck, got it out to Matthews of all people, which I'm sure Edler was very excited to see. And when Matthews took the shot, it went off Edler and in. So Buds take the lead early in the third. Brooksy, our boy Brooksy, scored off a point draw from Hall that he tipped down. And moving forward in the third period, it was Galch scored a goal to make it 4-1. After Willie was stopped in close. Again, Willie getting in those dirty areas and the team getting rewarded for it. And then it was Thornton who scored on the empty net. The shot count finished 37-20 in favor of the Leafs. And the boys at MP Money Puck had this game at 64% of the time, the Leafs coming out victorious.
So yeah, the Leafs capped off a dominant week with a nice 5-1 win. Auston Matthews being Auston Matthews, and Lepore. You look at the season that Matthews is having right now. He is scoring at a 66 goal pace over 82 games.
That's for this year.
That's for this year.
Yeah, because I read that over his last 82, he has 67.
Yeah, and there you
go back to next year. Yeah.
So he's got 67 goals over his actual last 82 games. And this year in particular, scoring at a 66 goal pace over 82. So
it's crazy.
It's been outrageous. And then when you look at Connor McDavid, so as amazing as this season has been for Auston Matthews, Connor McDavid has been outrageously dominant.
Yeah.
Like, it is insane. Okay. He's got 87 points right now. Let me just double check the scoring leaderboard. 87 points, 16 points ahead of his teammate Leon Draisaitl. So when you look at both of these guys, and people have been throwing around these stats on Twitter, when you adjust for era, Matthews from a goal scoring standpoint and McDavid from a point producing standpoint are having like two of the best seasons in the history of the sport.
Yeah, so good.
It is absolutely insane. And what we're seeing from these guys on a night in, night out basis, honestly, your jaw is just on the floor.
Yeah.
The way that Matthews is scoring goals, whether it's one-timers, whether it's that sorcery magic play he made against the Canadiens, batting the puck out of midair around a defender and firing it in. And then you see McDavid, these end-to-end rushes going through the entire team. It seems like every goal the Oilers score, McDavid, or I should even mention Draisaitl for that matter, are in on the goal. And when those guys don't produce a point, Edmonton just like can't win a game.
It's like a headline. It's funny. It sums it up that it's like a headline. Like McDavid didn't score last night or he only got 1 point or something.
It's crazy. And I actually checked the stats on this. There's 11 games this season where Connor McDavid did not record a point. The Oilers are 2-8-1 in those 11 games where McDavid hasn't recorded a point. So, I mean, obviously they're heavily reliant on him. Whereas when you look at the Leafs and Auston Matthews, they're 7-7-1 in games he hasn't played or recorded a point. So it just shows you, obviously the Leafs have more depth from top to bottom. They're just a better team. But Lepore, man, give me your thoughts on just what we're seeing from these two guys this season. This has been ridiculous.
I'll start with Matthews. And to me, his goal scoring ability is so brilliant because he scores different ways. Like, I get kind of bothered when people compare him to, you're like, oh, he's Brett Hull or he's Ovechkin. And it's like, no, he's not. He's not those players at all. Like, when you think of Ovechkin, you think of a certain goal. And that's not taking away from him. A goal is a goal no matter how it goes in. But you think of, okay, in his spot there, pass over, slaps it in. And that's not literally all of his goals, but it's a lot of them. Brett Hull was known for his shot, whether it was his slap shot or snap shot, his shot, Brett Hull. With Matthews, I mean, even having an amazing shot, what goal comes to mind? Or what type of goal, I should say? I don't have one.
No, neither do I, because he could score in so many ways.
Exactly. He scores on one-timers. He's one-time slap shots. He scores with his wrist shot. He scores on that drag. He scores in tight. He scores crazy goals like he did the other day against Montreal. To me, he's Mario Lemieux, if you want to make a comparable, because to me, again, he's that just incredible physical athlete. And I'll say it, like when I watched the World Cup, when he was put on the team North America, what were they, the under 24s? Is that what they were, that team? U24?
It was like under 23, I think.
Or under 23s. I remember watching that and just telling people, we got Mario Lemieux. And of course, you get attacked. I'm not saying, guys, he's Mario Lemieux or he's better than Mario Lemieux. But what I saw was the physical talents. Like there's always that like genius type talent that say that Gretzky had, where you watch him and you don't know why he's better than everybody else. He's just better than everybody else. And the only thing you can point to is his brain. He saw the game slower than everyone. And I see that in Sid too, where Sid will make a play where he enters his zone, just cuts back gradually and finds a guy wide open for a scoring chance, where it looks so simple, but that it was crazy. Like what he did was actually brilliant. And I make the comparison of Matthews to Lemieux because of the gifts, like the height, the size, the strength, the hands. Like for guys that big to have hands like that, the finishing ability. Like to me, that's what Auston Matthews is. And again, like it's an absolute blast to watch him. And the guy's the best Maple Leafs player we've ever seen. Period. Like you see these things come up of like the last time a Maple Leafs player led the league in goals. It was in like the 40s or 50s. I don't even remember the guy's name. Like for me to not know the guy's name shows like how long it's been and how relevant of a player that was. But I mean, the sad thing is, the shitty thing is with these conditions, the guy's been robbed of back-to-back 50-goal seasons. So
what a shame. He would have done it last season, missing the last 12 games of the season. He obviously is going to do it this season if there was a full 82 game schedule. So
yeah,
that sucks.
Yeah. When it comes to McDavid, I thought about it the other day because like we talk about the all-time great players in any sport, and this is like a full-blown sports conversation. I hate when people make comparables and they point to, say, a certain era, and the typical one is Gretzky. And people will say, oh, the game was shit back then, and the goalies sucked. Well, what I say to that is, okay, well, then why was Gretzky the only one doing it? And there's also the matter of, well, Gretzky didn't have elite world-class coaching training at 11 years old like these kids have today. He didn't have a one-piece stick. He didn't have the nutrition guy, the off-ice coach. So it's all relative to the time. So when I look at McDavid and I see how much better he is than everybody else, that to me is what's so incredible. And that's always how I've gauged athletes. Like when people ask me who the greatest player ever is, I point to Gretzky because I say no player has ever been further ahead of the rest of the league than he has and probably ever will be. But when you do look at McDavid and how much further he is than the pack, it is bananas in this era to have a player that good. And I said to my buddy the other day, and like not to make it about the Leafs, but like let's sit back for a second and talk about elite players. So John Tavares, as an example, John Tavares is objectively an elite National Hockey League player. This guy 2 years ago scored 47 goals. He's caught fire lately. He's approaching a point a game. He's a 200-foot center. Every general manager would give their right arm to have Jonathan Tavares on their team. Okay. So here you have this elite player. Think of if the Toronto Maple Leafs replaced John Tavares with Connor McDavid.
It's a wrap.
We'd be the Golden State Warriors of a couple of years ago.
It would be insanity.
Yeah. And that's, to me, this is the ultimate compliment to Connor McDavid in the way, like, think of teams around the league. The other one I gave was Vegas. And again, like salary cap implications, all that stuff. But okay, here at Vegas, like they're killing everyone, this and that. Replace Mark Stone or Pacioretty with McDavid. Like
it'd
they're
be terrifying. Another team, Lepore, to bring up, even like a team like Carolina.
Absolutely.
You put McDavid on Carolina, they're the overwhelming favorite to win.
Even if you remove, say, like Aho or whoever, like remove the, and then no, it's over. And I think I was saying to my buddy, kind of laughing. And again, I think Oilers fans know what they have. I think fans of the other teams around the league, we should all be saying, thank God this guy plays for this Oilers team right now. Because you could circle, that'd actually be an interesting conversation to list all the teams in the league, like say all the playoff teams, and remove
like
that
their number
team.
2 center and put McDavid on.
Put McDavid, team. Or even like take away their best player and insert McDavid. Yeah. Like you said, it'd be bananas, like the gap that would be there. And it'd be a different league. It'd be a different league for sure if he played somewhere else because he's that good. He is absolutely that. Like in Colorado, take off McKinnon, and that'd be a huge cap thing. But take off one of their top forwards and insert McDavid. It's like they're going undefeated. Like he's that much better than the other elite players in the league. And that's just a compliment to him. I'm not shitting on any other player or any other team specifically. I'm just saying the gap to me is that big. And that's why this guy is one of the all-time greats, and he's proving it this season.
It would be absolutely terrifying if he was on one of these other elite playoff teams. Because here's another stat I'll bring up. And this has been the most incredible hockey stat that I've seen this season. And it was first brought up by Matt Larkin of the Hockey News. And it's something that I've been keeping track of over the last week or so as the Oilers play more games. So the Edmonton Oilers, okay, Lepore, when Connor McDavid is on the ice at 5-on-5, they are plus 86 in scoring chances. Okay, which is obviously understandable. Connor McDavid is one of the best players in the world. Here's where it gets crazy.
So they're about like plus 2-ish per game. Okay.
When Connor McDavid is off the ice at 5-on-5, the Oilers are minus 196 in scoring chances. Almost minus 200 in scoring chances when Connor McDavid is not on the ice at 5-on-5. That just shows
staggering.
You.
That's
like,
staggering.
It is astounding how much this guy is carrying this team this season and just how good he is. Because when you compare that to the Leafs, another thing I've been keeping track of, so when Matthews is on the ice at 5-on-5, Lepore, the Leafs, it's actually a lot better. And just because the Leafs have more talent surrounding him, the Leafs are plus 166 in scoring chances at 5-on-5 with Matthews on the ice and plus 38 without him. So,
so you said the Oilers were plus 80 something with him?
Plus 86 with McDavid on the ice and minus 196 without him.
But you said the Leafs with Matthews are what?
Plus 166. So the Leafs are a lot more dangerous at 5-on-5 with Matthews on the ice than the Oilers are at 5-on-5 with McDavid on the ice.
That perfectly goes to like what I was just saying on how if you insert him on another team. And like I'd like to see what you just brought up with every team and their best player. Like I'd love to see that. Like how valuable is that best player? Yeah.
No, 100%. And that's exactly what I was going to bring up. Like it goes back to that whole conversation. Like you put McDavid on the Leafs, you put him on Vegas, you put him on Colorado, on Carolina, even Florida for that matter.
Like you put essentially anywhere.
Like, it
like
is
any average to above average team.
How good those teams would be if you replace, one of their centermen with Connor McDavid. It just shows you, I mean, Edmonton, I'm sorry. I know I've said a lot of, hurtful things this year that you guys don't want to hear, and how I don't think that the Oilers are just up to par with the Leafs specifically and some of these other Stanley Cup contenders, let's call them, around the NHL. But man, when you look at numbers like this, what a shame. What a shame that this team has not been able to put better pieces around McDavid and Draisaitl, because there is no excuse, Lepore. That Edmonton team should be, quite frankly, they should be the favorite to win the Stanley Cup every season. You have the best player in the world, the best player we've ever seen since essentially Lemieux and Wayne Gretzky, and you pair him with Leon Draisaitl, who just won the Hart Trophy last season, and really, you're just like they're a good team? Like, you should be one of the elite teams in the league, Lepore. It's so frustrating to watch, man. I don't know. It's
special, man.
It's just, I just, and you could, I'm obviously a Leaf fan and I want to see the Leafs do well, but I want to see this Oilers team do well. Yeah. I want to see Connor McDavid compete for Stanley Cups. I want to see Connor McDavid, on the brightest stage in all of hockey. I really do. And I hope at some point that the Oilers are able to surround him with some better talent. But yeah, when you look at some of these numbers, it just makes you think, like, what could have been if he landed in a different situation, if he was on one of these other teams right now. It would be terrifying. But
apparently, I don't know if you saw it, apparently on TNT, they got the new contract for the NHL in the US. They want to see Andrew Ference.
Yeah.
Did you see that? For those who don't know, TNT put out their announcement of them getting the deal for the NHL, and it was a picture of, was it Sid or Ovechkin, and then the other player was Andrew Ference. And I was listening to a podcast, and some intern or some kid must have been doing it, because the guy he just Googled Edmonton Oilers captain, and the photo that came up was the photo that they used. So some
Oh,
kid
no.
literally just probably typed in Edmonton, knew, oh yeah, that captain of the Oilers is a really good player. I'll use him. And he saw the picture of Ference and he used that. Just
Oh, what a
and
disaster.
again, how I say all the time on the show, I love hockey. I hate the NHL. just for embarrassing us all fans all the
Oh
time. Just
God, the
gross. Way to
NHL
go.
always finds a way, Lepore. They always
Terrible.
find a way to screw something up. But
Mm.
Lepore, we're getting to the end of this podcast here. Before we wrap things up quickly, let's just go over sort of the last 6 games here. So the Leafs, well, their next 3 games next week are all against the Montreal Canadiens. And just kind of a quick chat of the Canadian division right now, heading into the stretch run. What are your thoughts in terms of who you think is going to lock down that 4th playoff spot? Is it going to be the Habs, or is it going to be the Calgary Flames, who are still very much in play to make the playoffs at this point?
Well, what's the exact math now? So like after last night, like Montreal won, Calgary lost, and even then, like they keep showing the percentage. I think like Calgary's under 10% now. Like when they actually do the math.
Yeah, when you look at the stats right now, so Calgary, I mean, yeah, it's still they're 8
good.
points back. I don't know why I said that they have like a good chance to get into the playoffs. Yeah, mathematically, it is not looking good for Calgary right now. They're 8 points back with 6 games to go.
Yeah, the last couple of weeks still was that thing of like the old saying of like, does anybody want to make it?
Yeah.
Like you were kind of hoping or like assuming like their one team would go on a run, kind of, which is typical in sports where like at least one team just catches fire. And then you're looking at the standings like, wow, it is possible. And then no one really did it. And they had the chance because like Montreal was fluttering.
The
and
only
it's like,
saving grace right now, Lepore, for they play Vancouver 4 times.
The last 4.
And then they play Ottawa and Winnipeg. Whereas Montreal
has us.
They play the Leafs 3 times, the Oilers twice, and then they have Ottawa.
Okay.
So, but no, like you mentioned, like mathematically, if you look at like the percentages, like the Habs are most likely going to make the playoffs, but
Calgary essentially has to win out.
Yeah, they have to win
have
out.
A chance. Like,
and then obviously there's the whole fight with Winnipeg and Montreal for that matter. Like, who's gonna is Winnipeg gonna fall? What's gonna happen with them? So, I mean, yeah, at this point, like heading into next week, the Leafs have 3 games against the Habs, and I think that they could make a real statement here.
Yeah.
Like, you know, especially
or Montreal could.
What's that?
Or Montreal could.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. I mean, this is a big week here because the Leafs could really put their foot down here and say, you know, it's a wrap, Montreal. Like if they go 2-1, 3-0 against Montreal this upcoming week, and then Montreal is heading into the playoffs, you know, as the 4th seed, thinking, oh my God, like we just got steamrolled the final week of the season here.
Yeah,
or,
plant
you know,
those
like
seeds.
you mentioned, Lepore, it could go the other way. Maybe Montreal takes 2 out of 3 and Caulfield's buzzing around and Toffoli's still scoring some goals and they kind of get their mojo back a little bit. And then that gets the Leafs thinking a little bit. So
Montreal
very interesting week ahead here.
Yeah.
So any other final thoughts, Lepore, before we wrap this up?
I just want to see something happen, man. Like what I touched on just now, like I want to see something happen in the division. Like I want to see someone crumble, or I want to see someone like catch fire and make it interesting until the end. Like I guess we've seen now, like Edmonton, they're pretty well cemented at 2, which doesn't really change anything because it was going to be Oilers Jets this whole time. So it switches the home ice advantage. But give me some excitement, Canadian division. Give me some excitement. Somebody go on a run. Someone put pressure on the Habs, or Habs keep going, put pressure on Winnipeg. Like, let's see it. Let's keep us entertained, boys.
Yeah, it should be an exciting last couple of weeks of the season here. I mean, for the Leafs, it's just a matter of everybody stay healthy. There's going to be some more maintenance days. I mean, I could basically guarantee that at this point because barring a colossal disaster, as I mentioned earlier in the show, the Leafs are going to finish first in the Canadian division. And I think once they mathematically wrap up the division, that's when you're going to probably see all the stars sit out maybe the last couple of games. So it's going to be fun here down the stretch. And I think Leaf fans are just ready to get the playoffs started at this point.
100%. Yeah.
All right, everybody. That is going to do it for episode 17 of the Gluttons for Punishment Podcast, or GFP, a Toronto Maple Leafs and NHL podcast hosted by Michael Lepore and Anthony Bruno. So once again, everyone who's listening specifically, this would take 5 seconds of your time, and we would really appreciate it if you go on Apple Podcasts and give us a 5-star rating and review. That would really help out the podcast. And then, of course, if you are watching us on YouTube, it would be a big time help if you smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring the notification bell so you know exactly when the GFP podcast is dropping some new content. So thank you guys so much for listening. For Lepore and Bruno, we will see you guys in the next one.
Thanks, everyone.